Like Italy, other countries from around the world are scaling back Christmas celebrations for the second year in a row now. Places like the Netherlands, Ireland, and Germany are all reintroducing COVID regulations as the Omicron variant causes a fourth wave around the globe. Roxana Saberi is joining me now with the latest on how COVID is impacting Christmas for thousands around the world. Roxana, let's start where you are in London. The UK broke their daily record yesterday with nearly 120,000 new cases. What is the country doing to try and curb the spread?
Hi, Bradley. Yeah, so many people have been testing positive here that in England last week, an estimated 1 in 35 people were infected. And here in London, that figure was 1 in 10. Last year in London, we couldn't mix with anyone who was not from our own household for Christmas. But this Christmas, there are no restrictions on gatherings. There are signs, though, that people are being cautious. Many people have been staying away from large social gatherings so they could avoid getting infected before spending the holiday with family members. At the same time, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been urging the public to get a booster shot. Around 45% of the UK's population has received one. Johnson says people here should get jabbed not just for themselves, but also for their loved ones. And today he invoked the teachings of Jesus Christ, saying we should love our neighbors as we love ourselves. He has said he's watching COVID data hour by hour, but he said he would not announce new restrictions before Christmas. So, Bradley, we're all wondering what could be in store for us next week and how New Year's celebrations here could be affected.
One day at a time, Roxana. Meanwhile, Pope Francis's Christmas Mass will have a limited congregation, and it's going to take place earlier in the day this year amid Italy's COVID restrictions. Are any other countries pulling back on holiday celebrations?
They are. The Netherlands are back in a national lockdown, so the mood there is largely grim. Museums, restaurants, Christmas markets are all closed, and midnight masses have been called off. Spain and Italy are reintroducing outdoor mask mandates. In Greece, masks are again mandatory inside, too. And all public Christmas and New Year's celebrations planned by cities there are canceled. In Germany, starting on Tuesday, only 10 people can meet indoors, and New Year's gatherings will be prohibited there, too. Paris has canceled its traditional New Year's fireworks display over the Champs-Élysées. And in Brazil, the mayor of Rio de Janeiro says New Year's festivities have been canceled. But some of the world's big cities are still planning to celebrate. Cape Town and Dubai, for example, are going ahead with New Year's celebrations, but with safety measures in place. Bradley.
And we know that countries throughout Europe are also cracking down on the unvaccinated now. What are some nations doing to get more people vaccinated?
Well, it's a mix of stepping up vaccination drives and putting more restrictions in place. In much of Europe, vaccinations for kids under 12 kicked off last week. Kids ages 5 to 11 are now eligible in France. Italy is making its COVID vaccine pass valid for just 6 months instead of 9. And the country's health minister says unvaccinated people cannot enter museums and indoor bars and restaurants or even get an espresso traditionally drunk at the counter. In Austria, anyone with proof of vaccination or COVID recovery can leave home only for essential reasons. And anyone entering Vatican City has to be vaccinated or have recovered from COVID. You can no longer just show a negative test result to get in. Bradley.
Roxana, let's turn to South Africa, where some of the first Omicron cases were detected. What does the surge look like now there?
We are seeing a noticeable drop in new cases, which is good news. The country recorded around 21,000 new infections on Thursday, and that's down from nearly 38,000 less than 2 weeks ago. So while South Africa saw a rapid spike in cases with the Omicron variant starting in late November, it now appears the peak has already passed. Early data there also shows that Omicron may cause fewer hospitalizations and less severe symptoms than previous variants. Based on this data, the government says South Africans without COVID symptoms no longer need to isolate or test if they've been in contact with a positive case. Bradley.
Roxana, that's positive news. Do researchers think that other countries are going to see that happen too?
It's still early days, and in terms of whether the world will also see their Omicron infections recede quickly, well, some experts are cautioning that we have to keep certain caveats in mind. It is summer in South Africa when many gatherings are outdoors, where it's harder for the virus to spread, and it's the holiday season, so many businesses there are closed. In terms of whether Omicron may be more mild, there are other caveats there, too. experts point out that South Africa has a relatively young population, and more than 70% of the country's residents were infected with COVID before Omicron. So they were more likely to produce a strong antibody response to the current variant. But on a promising note, researchers in England and Scotland also say they have early data showing that Omicron infections result in less severe illness than earlier variants. So there is growing hope that the current surge won't be quite as terrible as feared.
Roxana, one other question for you. We're just over a month away now from the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. China is scrambling to deal with this new threat. What is changing now that we're so close to the Games?
Well, yeah, China is on high alert for new infections ahead of the February Games. It has shut its borders to most international rivals, and people coming to the Olympic Games will be sequestered. China is also punishing dozens of officials over a virus outbreak in the lockdown city of Xi'an. Officials there have reported more than 250 COVID cases in recent weeks. That doesn't sound like many, but the country has limited cases with its zero COVID strategy of long quarantines, targeted lockdowns, and tight border restrictions. Bradley.
Roxana, thanks for the breakdown around the globe. Merry Christmas.
Same to you.